Great. Well, welcome to the July 7th, 2022 meeting of the HMBBPAC. As has already been mentioned, we do not have a quorum, so we will just be moving forward with informational items. I think, do we still do a roll call, John?
We will, because we'll establish that there is not a quorum for a formal public hearing. So let's, for the record, let's go ahead and do that.
Okay. Committee member Ray Dupree.
Mute. Hello.
Hello. Committee member Schiller.
Present.
Committee Chair Rendon.
Here.
Okay, and I just wanted to note that committee members Foldenauer and Olson are absent / excused, and our student rep seat is vacant. All right, go ahead.
All right, thank you. So you received the agenda via email. Any questions, changes? Not that we could because we don't have a quorum, but basically the agenda will move forward as is. And likewise, you received the notes from the last meeting. We don't approve these, but again, they're just in there.
I would suggest, I would recommend, Chair, to push those to the next meeting when you have a full quorum, just for the sake of doing that. Even though you don't really adopt them and formalize it, why don't we just wait till we have an acceptance by a quorum and a full group there? I would say push that to the next meeting.
Okay, John, thank you. So we'll just move that item to the September meeting. Okay, and John, since it's not officially a Brown Act public meeting, do we still do public forum?
I would still offer the public forum to anyone who is here and has something to say. It's perfectly fine.
Okay. Well, in that case, again, this is for any topic that is not on the agenda that the public wishes to speak on. This is your opportunity to do so, and I will turn it over to Sherry, who's monitoring attendees.
I don't have any raised hands.
All right, then seeing no requests for public comment, we'll move over to the agenda items. And so we will start with the item number 1, update on the operations of e-bikes and other devices on trails and paths.
Thanks, Chair, committee members, John Dowdy. I just wanted to get you, up to speed a bit on just where we are and what's kind of happening with this. As you know, we came to this group almost the beginning of the year, I guess, at this point, January, I think it was, in January, February, sorry. But we put together an ordinance at that point. We actually conducted a study session a couple of months ago with the council. You were, each of you were sent a notice, and I think the agenda item for that. It was a good, I think, good process at that point. The council basically landed on, hey, we think we need to do some more work here. We're not sure what we really want to do with regard to this, and to clarify what we're really sort of primarily focusing on, which is whether there is whether we want to distinguish the coastal trail that the city controls, because that's all we can deal with right now, the city and basically not state parks controlled coastal trail, and whether we want to look at the types of e-bikes that are permitted on that section, and whether that would be any different on the Naomi Patridge Trail, or what we also are looking at, which is sort of the new East Side Parallel Trail, the other side of the road that the county's working on, we're working on, and so we're looking to extend that piece. We've heard all things out there, and I right now, based on state law, because we don't have an exclusion for the motorized bikes, class 1 and class 2 bikes are are basically permitted at this point. Just simply out of default, class 3s are prohibited everywhere. And so part of the, the question being is do we want to have the class 3s? And to remind folks, the class 3, sounds like most of you have used these and dealt with it, but the class 3 is distinguished by the ability to solely use, the juice without having to pedal. So it allows basically an up to 28 miles per hour. Class 3 allows both pedal and assist, and class 1 is only pedal assist. It has no governor, no control, throttle control on your hand, more like a moped or motorcycle kind of environment there. So I think my takeaway from the conversation was that many people in the community think that the coastal trail is too congested, shall we say, to allow anything and everything kind of there. And I think that there was definitely concern about class 3, particularly on the coastal trail. I think that there is an openness and willingness to look at class 3 along the Naomi Patridge and the Highway 1 related trails, which is consistent with things. But I really don't want to go into that detail. We kind of had that conversation back. But I just wanted to sort of put into context where we started. We also have talked about motorized scooters, motorized or electric skateboards, mono wheels, the whole kit and caboodle, and sort of all of that is a little on the table. But frankly, if I could get clarity on the issue of e-bikes, I'd be thrilled at this point in time down the road. So the council kicked this can down the road a little bit and said, look, let's do a little more research. Let's look at what's happening around. Let's look at what our other agencies around us are doing. Let's talk about that. And let's look at the issue of speed and speed limits. This committee talked about speed limits when you talked about it. It's certainly been a conversation prior to, I think, this constituency of the BPAC. And the concern that we remain on that is that there is going to be no enforcement of that. So it's going to be purely signage that says it. It's going to be purely folks yelling at other folks and dealing with that. There's just not going to be enforcement, but it is not unusual to have speed limits. And certainly what's in front of you is not an exhaustive assessment, but I did want to share with you kind of what I have found and just looking at some areas. And I tried to give a diversity, although I tried to look as much as I could on the coastal kind of perspective, because I think it's a little different. But I included Folsom as well, and you got the Marin Golden Gate's a little different. So you can see that a number of these agencies and on these coastal rec trails basically do have speed limits. Notably, Pacific Grove just adopted about a year ago. They went through a lot of this issue in Pacific Grove. I point that out simply because it's where I think most people around probably have been on the Pacific Grove or the Monterey Trail at some point. Interesting, the Monterey portion of the recreation trail, which is the old railroad trail, the old railroad path through there, doesn't have they never set a speed limit. But they do have certain areas where they restrict kind of certain activities. And Monterey, no motorized scooters allowed, for example. No scooters in Pacific Grove, and then you have everything else in between, kind of from that. You can see in Marin County, no class 3s. What I found is that what a lot of folks have sort of landed on is that it really does it, you know, it doesn't necessarily matter whether it's a class 1, 2, or 3 in many of these jurisdictions. What I can read between the lines and read what's in their staff reports is that it comes down to the operator and how they operate, how they choose to operate, how fast they choose to operate. And so I would say that there's kind of two schools of thought out there in the ordinance world. One is sort of one that sort of focuses on behavior, meaning don't drive recklessly, don't, you know, deal with that, and you can kind of stop, and they will cite people and stop people for driving recklessly on their paths and trails, and then combine that with a stated speed limit in many of the instances. And the second piece is more of the ordinance that we had put forth in a draft form, which was to basically look at defining and designating perhaps where class 1 and 2 might be allowed and where class 3 might otherwise be allowed. One of the things I'll point out is the top piece there is an important piece that we're also trying to deal with. And you might have seen in the newspaper, I think back again about a couple of months ago when we were starting to circulate our draft ordinance and talk about it, is the Princeton Harbor had a vendor wanting to start up a e-bike, and the Harbor Commission decided to hold off on that entering into a lease until decision had made and consistency had determined with regard to the whole coastal trail and what types of e-bikes would be allowed. You also may have noted that in Half Moon Bay State Park, in their section of the coastal trail, signs appeared mysteriously as we were talking about these issues, and landed on the fact that only class 1 e-bikes are allowed in that segment of trail. So everything from Kelly up to basically Murata Road, basically only class 1s are allowed. So I just want to be clear, that's at least their determination at this point that the superintendent has made. So
that is actually common to state parks.
It is, and that's what we have landed on that one, and we've seen the state parks information on that. I think there are some folks that think that there's a chance of changing that. I don't think that there's a change. I don't think, Mario, you can weigh in on this one, or anybody can weigh in on this one, but I don't see state parks changing their position, which puts us in an awkward position, which is that you've got this huge segment of the trail, which is limited to class 1 of, if we're talking about the coastal trail. And so it becomes this whole big question of then what do we do? What does San Mateo County do? And what does that little piece of Princeton Harbor do with the coastal trail? So that's kind of the gist of this. I just want to, you know, I certainly I'm open to your thoughts and ideas on this deal and dealing with it. This wasn't necessarily intended for a major debate and discussion, but I wanted to let this committee know that this was still going on, that we were working on it, and that I wasn't keeping you in the dark. This is just not something that is going to be coming to the council within, you know, probably 2 to 3 months. It's the earliest it'll come up. I'll just mention a couple of other things that are sort of in that. Once you go to the next one there, Jonathan, just that one, is that we've talked with this committee at different times. So obviously part of the conversation also is sort of looking at signage to try to deal with making people remember and understand when they hit at least our piece of the trail. And what my hope is that we will get the other agencies to adopt this, and we can put their logos and everything on it, and we can have a consistent theme on sort of the share the trail information throughout the whole coastal trail, regardless of when we figure out what e-bikes and what we do with skateboards and all these things and deal with it. And I kind of like the one on the left, but we took Jonathan pulled up a couple of these just for examples of what's being done out there, and there are certainly good ones. And I'm sure you folks probably have been on some great trails and have great signage. I have some pictures of different places and dealing with it. But this is part of the package that we definitely see moving forward. And then finally, I'll mention, and then I'll turn it to you guys and let you ask questions and give you any thoughts you have on it. We are next week, we're hoping late next week to go live on a survey to the community, and that's and to any users out there. So we'll make sure you the committee gets connected to that, and if you get it out there to folks, and we're really wanting people to weigh in, and we're asking both for Coastal Trail kind of conversation as well as for the Highway 1 trail. We're trying to figure out who people are, where they're coming from, what do they use? Do they have a class 1, 2, or 3? Do they skateboard? What are they dealing with? So I think it's about around 13, 14 questions. So we're trying to get a fairly well-rounded information regarding this. This is something the council particularly likes, but I think it's good to just understand where people are coming. We will also have signs at critical points on the Coastal Trail with a QR code, so people can, for visitors alike, we welcome the visitors to give their input on the Coastal Trail and the Naomi Patridge Trail or whatever with that. And so that we're hoping to go live by the end of next week is the plan at this point, and we're working on it right now. So that's kind of I know a lot to take in, and I know I talk a lot, so I'll stop and I'll catch my breath and let you save your ears from hearing me. So questions, comments, thoughts?
Thank you, John. I'll just make a comment. I appreciate the spreadsheet with the comparisons. I love that kind of stuff. So just good information gathering. And I also like the efforts at just consistency with the jurisdictions, wherever that lands. So yeah, those are my 2 cents.
Thanks. Eric, you seem to be very and you're big into the bike scene and all that stuff. Do you have, just in a general sense of a thought on the 1, 2, 3, debate, just in general of whether you really see a difference in those, or whether it really is about the operator more than it is the bike itself?
I would probably say that there's some things that are closer to mopeds in the class 3. So, but generally, if someone's pedaling, it's pretty hard to tell a difference.
Okay.
And I guess I would just pose a question of what do we want this space to be for? Not so much what do we want to be promoting? Not just like one type of bike or another, but are we making sure everyone can get out to the coast? Are we really discouraged? What are we really discouraging? And kind of getting to keeping a broader intent of the space and not getting too caught up in the weeds of certain details.
Eric, I like that comment a lot. I think that's we as staff sometimes, a governmental agency, we tend to think in the prohibition model rather than the permissive side of things. And I know that our ordinance probably kind of went that way, and I'm guilty as charged on that a bit. I think the council got that, and I think that's really kind of where they want it. I think the questionnaire, the survey, is going to answer a lot of that, because we were trying to figure out, who's walking, what they're doing and dealing with it. Because I think the issue, and unfortunately, it's everything sort of rolls back to because the parallel trail right now doesn't exist it's a disjointed pieces of the trail. It's not what most people will take to go and to get from one end, from the harbor or Granada Elementary, all the way down to, say, Miramontes Point Road or whatever, right? Our hope is to be able to deal with that and to make that happen. And those are getting closer to reality of those segments being completed. But So that's also the challenge I think we have and you have as a committee is helping to get people to realize that there will be that truly that connected parallel trail along the Highway 1, and what should that be versus what the coastal trail. And I think that the council is, at least some of the council members, and I think the community really are sort of saying that the coastal trail is a coastal recreational trail, sort of in line with what they call it in PG Monterey. That's what they refer to it as, and therefore it implies that it's for use by everyone, kind of, and therefore it's a challenge to basically make it safe for every user. Mm-hmm. But I really appreciate the comment, because I do think that has been a bit of the issue, and I'll own that one. Is it's been sort of designed around that.
Yeah, and it can kind of be advocated either way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But state parks has made it very difficult. Although I don't know that they will ever actually enforce against a 2 or a 3. Right. Honestly, I mean, but it does create this challenge. So anyway, we don't have to belabor this conversation on it. I just wanted to. This is really just an update to let you know that it hasn't gone away. We are trying to work with those other folks on the top piece there. And sorry, Janet, I want to cut you out.
No, I don't feel cut out. I just wanted to point out that the state parks, part of their reasoning seems to be, I mean, just from conversations I've had, that if they encounter people riding class 2 and class 3 bikes, that are making it difficult for others to use the trail simultaneously, then it would give them something to enforce to bring these people to heel, so that they have to be good citizens, or they can be compelled to become good citizens by enforcing the category 2 and category 3 issue. So I'm just tossing that out there.
No, that makes a lot of it makes a lot of sense. But the challenge that they have, where the benefit, the opportunity they have over all of the other agencies is that they have more staff that are actually out there. And they'll say they don't have enough. I know that, and I think we'd all probably agree. But they have far more than any of us will have out there at any given time on this deal. Did anybody have a thought on the speed limit issue? Because this came up through this point. I am sort of just, and then I'll let it go to the next item. But I did want to just, because this seemed to be a place where everybody was heading, including Princeton Harbor was pushing toward a 15 mile per hour maximum and everything with that deal. I think you could probably read my voice a little bit, and that I'm not convinced that it's going to solve anything except make people more frustrated with it. But I also recognize, and I got some sort of negative feedback from council, from at least one council member on the idea of the feedback speeds. One of my thoughts is, if you're going to have the speed limit out there, that you need to have those, at least a small electronic feedback radar signs each direction that let you know when you're going too darn fast with that deal, or you are going the right speed limit, and you kind of set it with that deal. And there was some concern. I think we can get past that, but I guess that's a question that I know that council member Penrose had raised some concerns during the meeting, that she didn't want to see electronic signs out there on the coastal trail. And I get that part of it, but I'm not, if you don't have a feedback for how fast you're going, I'm not sure how you know how fast you're going. I know a lot of bikes have speedometers on it, but a lot don't. And a lot don't look at theirs. So I don't know. I think it's a tough. I'll leave it at that. It's a tough one, and I won't make you answer anymore if you don't want to.
I would just chime in that in high school, I ran a 5-minute mile. I say that because that's 12 miles an hour. So a 12-mile-per-hour speed limit means that, well, no fast running. So it's not just applicable to cyclists. And 10 and 8 miles an hour is even slower than a brisk run or fast run.
Yeah.
But I think some of the lower speed limits are bringing into questioning of running on the coastal trail and how much should people be running. So that's kind of, 15 is probably getting beyond a running speed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think just from my experience of riding the coastal trail that 15 is perfectly reasonable. I don't try to pass anybody still doing 15. I usually slow down to between 8 and 10 if I'm passing someone, because I don't want to startle people. I want to be a good citizen on the bike path.
If you note the Marin National Rec area there, it's 5 miles per hour for when passing. So I'm assuming that's primarily passing a pedestrian with that, but I guess it could be any number of things. It could be a very slow bicyclist. You can almost can't hold up at 5, I think, on a bike, but that is something that they had posted and set with that deal for the passing. So that sort of comes along, I think, in some of the rules of the road in terms of, the whether you get the bell, the horn, or at least acknowledging on your left, on your right, whatever, coming around and stuff. Okay, I think that Sherry, is there anybody from the public wishing to speak on this issue?
No, I have no raised hands.
Okay. With that, let's go on to the next item. So I am going to give a plug for Jonathan, and frankly, much of my staff. But since Jonathan is here, he gets the main plug. He was the primary on an OBAG, One Bay Area Government 3 grant. We also submitted 4 other transportation bike related grant submittals, which he will go over. We spoke about one of those primarily at your last meeting, but I wanted to let you know sort of the status that we did get all of those in, and just give you a little more update on those. I think they're exciting, and they took an inordinate amount of time to put together. So anyway, great job, Jonathan. Great job to the other staff as well with that deal. But as with every grant, there are no guarantees. So I think we put very good packages together. We hope that they will be considered fairly and openly, but no guarantees. Jonathan, take it away.
Thanks, John. So yeah, I'll just be talking about the 5 grants that we submitted in the past couple of months. And it's just a brief overview, nothing too in depth, but just kind of talking about what the grant is and who's it funded by, as well as pretty much how much we asked for and what the project is itself. So starting off with the OBAG 3 grant, if I can get to the next slide, sorry about that. So the OBAG 3 grant is funded by the MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. And one of the kind of aspects or categories that OBAG 3 looks into is complete street elements, similar to how we have at Poplar, and that we kind of went back to the BPAC committee multiple times about the Poplar traffic calming and safety project. It's a similar case, but this time for this grant, the 3rd cycle of One Bay Area grant, in pretty much called OBAG, is the Kelly Avenue Complete Street Improvements Project. And it's just a very similar case, and you kind of see on a picture over there on your top right, a couple of residents walking along the bike path. We kind of stress this in the application, saying that a bike lane should not be held with pedestrians pretty much, and they should have their own pedestrian facility to walk along while feeling safe and not near any vehicles passing by. So that's one grant. That's basically the main point that we brought up within that grant, and we're hoping to get hopefully $5 million in total for that project, which is the maximum amount of money that we could request for from OBAG. And the improvements that we requested are from Main Street all the way down to the State Beach entrance that you can see on your picture over there. So the next couple of grants that we applied for, and this was back in June, it was submitted back in June, was the ACR and TDM grant. My apology, I think this was a couple months ago, but it was funded through the San Mateo County Transportation Authority, also known as the SMCTA, and it's basically just the use of sustainable transportation options across San Mateo County, just to utilize, utilize buses or promote bicycle riding throughout the entire San Mateo County. So a couple of grants that we submitted within the past couple of months was the Mid-Coast Side Traffic Demand Management Plan. And this was a joint application that was funded, or joint application with San Mateo County, but it was two separate applications. So we're hoping to get accepted with that grant and work with San Mateo County to kind of work with us as well within Half Moon Bay. So what that will do is just identify and support the congestion that we have along the coast side and try to limit and try to reduce that as much as we can. Another grant that's also funded or under this pretty much grant itself is the what's called a Pedal for a Purpose e-bike pilot program, and that was requesting about $200,000. The main purpose of that was to promote the use of e-bicycles or e-bikes along the coast side for low-income teachers, or agricultural workers, hospitality workers, and those who just live along and work along the coast side.
So that would be a grant. That would be a grant for full purchase of an e-bike, along with safety equipment and training that goes along with that. Is what that program would include.
Awesome. And then the next grant that was submitted, this was submitted last month, was the Active Transportation Program, also known as ATP. And this was also funded by the MTC, Metropolitan Transportation Committee. And it just encourages different active uses of transportation other than vehicular traffic or vehicular use. So recently we submitted two separate applications. One is an infrastructure grant, so just kind of building something basically, and one is a planning grant, just trying to focus on like planning one portion of a project. So the infrastructure grant, and this was presented to the BPAC, I believe, last meeting in May, I believe it was. It was the East Side Parallel Trail North Segment 2. And what that is the East Side Parallel Trail connecting from the Highway 1 North project, which is Segment 1, and connecting to the existing East Side Parallel Trail, which is called Segment 3, which is from Rousseau, Francais to Roosevelt. So that's already existing, and we're just trying to fill the gap in between that existing trail as well as what will be there for Segment 1 or the Highway 1 North project. So the grant was requesting about $3 million, and it was basically for the design and construction of that 2,100 foot span of a Class 1 multi-use trail. The next grant, like I said,
just the big piece and cost of that is a separate bridge crossing Frenchman's Creek. So so it's to understand why the price tag is such. Yeah,
so the pedestrian bridge can cost quite a bit, according to based off that 3 million. So the east, the next grant that we applied for was the East Side Parallel Trail South. So this is basically from Higgins Canyon Road all the way down to Miramontes Point Road, connecting Moon Ridge, or the southern end of the city limits, all the way to basically almost down the southern side of downtown, where we had that Highway 1 South project. So it's a planning grant. It's not an infrastructure grant. So this is just evaluating and planning for a 1.3 mile, again, class 1 multi-use trail to hopefully connect the east side of Highway 1 all together. And with that, that's pretty much all the 5 grants that we've submitted. And I'm happy to attempt to answer any questions that anyone has. Oh, I think we're good. Sherry, anybody?
Nope.
Okay. Awesome, awesome. So I guess we'll go down. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
Would this, maybe it's too early to ask, but what about crossing Highway 1 as opposed to just running parallel? Would this also include
for these two, the ATP grants?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for these 2 grants, we just focused on just the parallel side of Highway 1. So we have the Naomi Patches Trail on the west side, and then we have that one connection point, segment 3. I'm not too sure if you guys.
So let me roll with this one.
Sure.
So Highway 1 North project includes a signal and crossing improvements at Terrace Avenue. So that'll be an additional crossing point that doesn't exist today. You might have seen recently there was a conversation regarding whether we look at and evaluate the possibilities, including the possibilities of changing out the signal at Rousseau Francais toward a roundabout, something of that nature. Nothing that we've been looking at and proposing there would take away that crossing there at this point in anybody's mind. So you've got a crossing there. Beyond that point, there is nothing on the books, although I think that we all see the likelihood of probably a crossing point up at Roosevelt, perhaps, as being a point there. If you go across the street and look at that, if you look at the aerial there is the piece on the east side of the highway to the north of the nurseryman's property right there where he's pointed there, and that's slated for future development at some point of residential development. I think when and if that comes forward, I think you're likely to see some kind of full intersection roundabout of some kind or whatever at that point at Roosevelt, and that would be a logical point probably for connection and connectivity back over to the beach, the coastal trail, and some of those things down Roosevelt perhaps at that point.
Great, thank you.
Good. All right.
Awesome. With that said,
those were 2 items in one, so just
Yes. So those were the Kelly Avenue Complete Streets grant and the other recent grants in the middle. So just combine them a little bit together just to make it a little bit easier. So the next item we'll go on was the Poplar Parallel Trail update. As you probably might have known, on Poplar Street, closer towards the beach side, we improved the existing trail by doing a full depth reclamation and a hot mix asphalt overlay on top. And that was completed back in November of 2021. So right now, after a few seasons, We actually heard some unfortunate news from a couple of residents, and we got a couple emails, a couple phone calls from a few residents, and we found some cracking along the pathway. So we just wanted to bring this up to the BPAC just to let you guys know, as well as the public, that we're aware of this, and we're going to do our best to investigate as best as we can, and look through all our facts and just try to zone in into just trying to find out the reasoning to why this is happening.
So I will, if I can, there's sort of two pieces. One is that we are within the warranty period for construction defect. We are not assigning defect at this point from the construction. We need to talk, and we are talking to the designer. We are talking to the soil geotechnical consultant on this, and we will be talking to the contractor as well. What I think is fair to say is this is probably some of the worst soil conditions anywhere in the city. It is highly expansive clay soil. So we were expecting some, expansion, contraction, and some cracking on this, but we have cracking beyond what we were anticipating, and along sections where we were not anticipating this. So again, we're here because we want to have full disclosure to the community, to you folks. We know it exists. We're working on it. We're trying to figure it out. And if there was a defect in any portion of the work, then we're going to hold them accountable. If it is simply an issue of the soil conditions, we will figure out the best approach to repairing and getting this. And I just ask people to remember that this is far better, even with some cracks, far better and far safer than what we had prior to the reconstruction of this. So it's all perspective. But so again, that's all this is about. We don't have any answers, don't have any solutions. We've been, I'll say Jonathan and our public works inspector have been talking to folks and dealing with it. And that's just all we have to offer, but just wanted you to know we were aware, and the community be aware that we are aware.
Yeah, thank you for that.
This was not what we wanted to be doing. We have a lot of projects, and this is not one we wanted to revisit, but we are where we are. So the good news is, I will say this, the council approved the capital improvement program, which does include the overlay of about 15 to 1,600 linear feet of the coastal trail itself that has the very bad cracking on it from Poplar to the north. So the timing couldn't be better if we're going to probably do a repair work on this, to have also being able to have the asphalt and the work and contractor, perhaps if we have to do the work outside of a construction defect kind of claim, it'll be the least expensive path to travel to go down in terms of repair work that we do. So if there is a silver lining, it is that we're planning on being out there already for the coastal trail itself, and we still have to figure out that one a little bit in terms of timing with the crowds and weather. So we'll be getting more update on that as probably at your next meeting on what we're doing on some of these other projects. Okay. So I have been, I don't know if you're aware what's been going on here. We had basically a year ago, we had almost a year ago now, a donor who is anonymous at this point come forward to say that they were interested in helping fund maybe some improvements to the Smith Field. And at that point, they noted a desire to look at trying to improve the parking lot and access into there. And I don't know how much time any of any of you spend there. But I included it in tonight just simply because it seemed like a logical point to talk to you about it. It's also a major jumping off point for folks going out into the Wave Crest area, to the trails and paths for walking, for dog walking, some biking as well. So I just wanted to just bring you up to date and up to speed on where we are, and give also, a broader spectrum of information out there. We received in May the approval of the Parks and Rec Commission for the facilities master plan. And again, I'll just start with the facilities master plan was intended to look at Smithfield, look at the constraints, look at what we have, look at existing conditions, talk to the stakeholders, talk to folks out there, and try to figure out how do we maybe expand expand offerings out there to a broader multi-generational people. How do we improve access, obviously, as part of this issue? And how do we encourage other users and allow some expansion of use, including folks like the soccer, youth soccer, and other soccer, adult soccer, and also how do we activate this park from more than sort of what's been perceived for many years as being the Little League field to something that you would actually go to if you were looking to go out and recreate. And that includes an interest in picnicking, an interest in barbecue sites, so people can have, birthday parties and things of that nature out there, particularly those that have limited space and maybe have multi-families in the multi-family environment, things of that nature. But everybody sort of suffers through that, and it's a beautiful area at times. So we were tasked with developing this plan to look at the basic civil engineering and to also look at basic kind of layout and planning, and to look at the environmental constraints. And what I'll just point out for you is basically the red lines that you see, the red dashed lines, are the areas that reflect either the wetland buffer areas, or basically are drawn around existing developed areas. So many of those areas would be actually in what would be required as a buffer area, but because they're existing development, they're allowed to continue to have development on them. But you can see just from those lines how constrained that 32-acre piece gets. So you basically carve out all of that area because this shows the entire parcels. So what we have is pretty much what we have there at Smithfield, with the exception of some expanded areas, which we're kind of looking at. Jonathan, once you go to the last slide, is probably the easiest one to start with. Actually, I hate the order that these were set in, but I gave them that way. So this is a better picture of just sort of seeing the entirety of the project. So what the master plan, again, looks at for a long-term plan for Smithfield is preserving and retaining the youth baseball fields, 1, 2, and 3 there, the ones to the left. Field 4 traditionally, or Field 5 is what really it is the baseball, is Little League. They call it Little League Field 5 is the big, where number 8 is. And that location is sort of designated for active sports, meaning that baseball and youth baseball could continue and will continue on that until such time as other decisions are made and the decision is made to do something else with that. But we've also evaluated the opportunities to put active sports courts on there. This site, this field area here was just designed initially to look at, it would accommodate 3 for example, three sand volleyball courts, a basketball court, and pickleball courts, 2 pickleball courts. So just that area, if you were looking at purely activating into an active sports, but we don't want to lock into any of those uses because we're not sure when and if any of this happens, and what sports and activities are going to be desirable in the future. Pickleball was kind of not on the horizon here a decade ago, and all of a sudden it blew up. Sand beach volleyball has blown up in the last few years, but those things have an ebb and tide, ebb and flow to them with it, and so kind of going. If you follow next door at all, this is the designated 8 or field 5 has been the area that many of the Little Leaguer folks have been screaming about because they're saying we're taking it away from them. And in fact, we're not taking that field away, but we do think that it makes sense to start to look at other uses, and the other uses that would actually benefit also the Little League as well, which could be basically having these active sports courts which would encourage maybe siblings to be around, hang around at the fields while maybe their younger siblings or even older siblings play at the Little League, either with practices or games or whatever. I think one of the kind of the coolest. I'm really excited about this, frankly. I think the whole vision is amazing. If you look at 4 area, and Jonathan, you want to point out where the 4 is, you see kind of the multicolor down there. That would be a very large playground facility. And when we asked at Night of Lights, when we did a community outreach, playground was like one of the #1 items. When we did our community survey, 320 some people, individuals filled that out. Playground was a huge something that they wanted. Again, I think it plays well with Little League and other activities there. But it also makes that an active place for people to come to, and not just go to Ocean View or not just go to Oak or not just go to Frenchman's or whatever, but to actually come here as a community park and be drawn here. Area 3. There is that kind of taupey or sandy color area. That basically represents a significantly larger dog park area with a small dog and a large dog area. Right now, we don't have a large dog area. We don't have a distinct separated with that. So if you have a large dog, you say you don't have a small dog area, and if you have a small dog, you say you don't have a large dog area. But either way, they don't have a distinguished area, and this would move that and sort of expand those offerings. Number 11 there to the east of that would be a passive recreation walking trail. Some of the things that we had indicated a desire for folks that were waiting for their kids, maybe at the various sports or whatever, Little League, whatever, to be able to go and take a walk and enjoy the wildlife around there, or just exercise and get out. So we've tried to look at encouraging that. 5, there is a barbecue area. 10 would be a new restroom. And 5 would be sort of just a outdoor area and picnic area there with some tables and stuff. And sort of I think the crowning jewel to all of this project for many people is number 6, which would be an all weather synthetic turf, all multi-purpose field. So you can see the layout of the softball. So you can still have recreational softball, kickball. You could have soccer games there, multiple soccer practices there. Frankly, you could have large community events, festivals, concerts. If you didn't want them downtown, you wanted to have them, you could have them out here. It just provides for year-round use of that. And this would continue to be a lighted area as well. So you would get basically use during even the short the short days of the wintertime. And then it would include, number one, fully paved and improved parking and expanded parking up and paved parking up into where the dog park, playground, and all that is. So about 165 designated spaces there, a reconfigured concession area for Little League, and all to boot there. So that's the gist of where we are, and we are looking at coming to the council for a special meeting for hopefully the council to accept the master plan and to sort of decide what the next steps are moving forward. But so that's the long and short of it. The other ones, if you want to just go backspace, just are sort of the phasing plan, just so you know. So once you go back one, so this, we kept getting the this pushback on, well, they're numbered, they're 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, or whatever. And the numbering sort of indicated that they had to be sequential. And the last thing we want to indicate is they have to be sequential. So we basically renamed these by color. The only thing that sort of has a phase 1 to it is initial phase, which would be the parking lot and maintenance access. That is something that the donor has still indicated an interest in helping to support and co-op and basically provide some funding to, not a full funding at this point. But otherwise, these things could all happen at one time if we had $16 million, which is the conceptual price tag on the entirety of this. We wanted to obviously go in probably a more phased approach to this. So those details are all in the report, and we'll provide a link when that all is posted with the revisions that we've been working on for the council meeting. We're happy to give those and send those to you so you have them. But that's what's happening on the Smithfield side, I continue to go back to is I think it's an exciting, at least vision, because I think people have looked at Smithfield and they've seen no vision in many respects. I think the Little League loved their park, and I understand that, but they also see something better, and are looking at their own potential donor for maybe going to fully synthetic turf outfields and stuff, so they can work more year round. This project also would be coinciding, if we move forward with the initial phase work, with a new extension of a water main on Wavecrest from basically the area in front of the RV park down there. So that's an additional cost that we've been planning and looking at and dealing with it. And again, the final reason the question sort of is, why did you do this whole master planning? Well, we needed an idea what the cost of that initial phase would be. We needed some environmental information so we could kind of have a better perspective on this. We needed also some civil to know what we could do and what was needed to deal with getting ADA, Americans with Disabilities, access here, drainage to work, all those things. And the big piece is that we don't want to build parking lot and improvements here and then come in and rip it up to put in a water main up and through there. So we're trying to actually do this forward thinking about those things and dealing with that. So that's kind of the nutshell version of all of this work. And we'll let you know when the council special meeting is. We'd love to have you guys show up if you pass it along to folks if they're interested, with it. And if you know Little League folks, if you could tell them that we're not trying to take their field away from them, but I think there needs to be consideration of the future. And, there are some questions about, youth sports in general, baseball, youth sports, and whether that's going to continue in the same numbers. And eventually it may or may not, we don't know. But if we looked at converting field 5, field 4, this shows field 4, whatever, that area up there, obviously this would go through a separate process for conversation with the community and outreach and engagement. And also we would be looking at what's identified as field 3, looking at flexing that field more so they could accommodate their same needs and everything within those fields, if that came to be. So that's the major change that has occurred since the Parks and Rec Commission reviewed this. Those were shown just as active sports courts. So this goes back to evaluating and looking at at both having baseball, youth baseball, as well as the opportunity down the road for the active youth court sports. So anyway, I'll shut up. Got any questions, comments?
This just looks like a great vision, and hopefully it all gels together and comes to fruition. A great community asset.
What would be the earliest starting point for any of this?
If the stars all aligned, and we decided to move forward with and match the donors' money for the initial phase, it would be probably next summer would be the earliest that we could be looking at that. We would look after their season because we wouldn't want to have a mess out there during the baseball, the main Little League season in particular with that. But it would probably be, mid to late summer into the early fall.
So pessimistically, couple 3 years.
I don't know the donor's going to hang out that long. So it either, I think, is an issue of agreeing to match the donor and acknowledging that you're going to have to find the money to match that, or you're going to have to step aside from the donor and hope that they come back maybe when we're in a situation that we can feel more comfortable funding it, or the alternative that exists out there. And I think this is something that the community needs to start to think about. We have a very good credit rating now. Even, we're well past our near bankruptcy point from Beechwood. We have a very good credit rating. We basically have virtually no debt as a city. And if we took the X million dollars from the donor and we basically committed some money to that, and we decided that we wanted to bond this project and deal with it, we could probably make a significant dent in this. And, at least I would argue the orange phase and the initial phase could be done pretty simply with that. With bonding and with fairly limited amount of indebtedness from the city over time. So, that's a situation that the council and the community are going to have to deal with, is whether they're willing to take something beyond just pay as you go and look at a financed approach to improvements like this, and how important is this for the community. So keep that in mind. And, I'm making any value judgment, but this is how other jurisdictions where they don't have a lot of growth occurring, that's how you build nice parks and nice facilities, is that you bond for it.
Okay, thank you very much.
I had a question about the trails to the west of they connect Colony, and there's also Seymour and Poplar. Is there a way to make those kind of broader or more accessible to like people biking to the baseball fields, something like that?
Well, so co-side, so thanks for asking. And that was going to be an item that I was going to mention and almost forgot about it. Coastside Land Trust, the city council last meeting, I believe it was. It seems like so long ago. Basically entered into basically an agreement with Coastside Land Trust for providing the use of existing street right-of-ways in the old Wave Crest area. So the area basically to the west of this where people are walking all over. So keep in mind, much of that is private properties, private parcels, but there's dedicated unimproved public streets in there. So there's a whole grid of subdivision and subdivided lots in there. So we authorized and gave them basically the city manager the authority to enter into an agreement with them to lease to them in essence that right of way. They have plans that they have developed, and they're planning to come forward with the coastal development permit with the city in the near future, an environmental document and everything. And they have, I believe, have just made also a submittal or getting ready to submit a grant application for a state grant for funding here. And they've also been working with the Conservancy. So that's the Coastside Land Trust, which owns a number of the parcels, and they're also own the parcels directly to the south of Smithfield. Are working on that, and we're working with them on that. So that's a big piece. So that would connect from the existing Coastside Land Trust trail that is the coastal trail that cross Seymour Bridge, and you go on to that. That would connect it all the way to Redondo Beach Road. It would also include access to the beach. So it would include a vertical access improvements, 2 vertical access improvements down to the beach. Down near Redondo, which is very exciting, which would then ultimately connect into that piece of the coastal trail that exists at Redondo Beach that heads to the south. So we are this year. We've done tree assessments and arborist reporting and everything, and we're trying to figure out how to make it all work to try to improve and fix that area that's really rough and really awful just to the south or to the north of the bridge there, going over I think it's between hole 16 and 17 there of the Ocean Colony course there, the old course. And connecting that, we are also we're I don't think we have the contract yet in place, but we also have a contract to repair that cracked sidewalk that's kind of really bad there behind the townhouse units there that are part of the Ritz-Carlton area there. So we're looking at both of those pieces this year to fix and work on those. So there is, again, that plan in place and working toward connecting the coastal trail. And my understanding is there's even work to continue and extend the coastal trail beyond the golf course at some point in unincorporated county area. So that would be hopeful to go up to Cowell access point, at least, I think, with that. So that would be exciting. So that all of that is sort of planned. It's there. Some of it's more imminent than others. We'll see what happens with the grant funding, and let's hope. Did I cover it?
Oh yeah, thank you.
All right. And I will say this with the issues that we're seeing on Poplar Parallel Trail. I do think we have to seriously look at some of our trails and look at I mean, I know people don't like them, but if this was decomposed granite trail, we wouldn't be seeing these cracks, or we'd be filling the cracks with just recompacting the decomposed granite and just refilling. And I'm not second guessing our decision at all on this one. We replaced like with like, except we expanded by 2 feet. But I do think this points out the reason and the issues and some of the challenges why, when we've talked about some of those improvements, is that even some of the biking ways may should be ultimately transitioned into that. I'm not absolute on that one, but we're going to have to look at probably more of these trails. And this would have been a place where you could have done that fairly easily, because you already had Poplar Street existing where the bikes could go, and this could have been just a pedestrian way kind of deal with that. Again, shoulda, woulda, couldas. I'm not going to do that. This is where we are, and this was a great project, and we're going to make it great once again. But you can see all out through these trails and these paths the challenges we have with really, really poor soil conditions, and it's just cost prohibitive to go down. I'll give you just on this here. Our soil geologist basically said for him, if you really, really wanted to make this probably immovable and not a crack come on this, you would have to over excavate down to about 4 feet to get to that point, build up a foundation point to that point, and then build your trail on top of that. That would be probably a $800,000 trail, this section of this trail, versus the $100,000 and $200,000 that we were at, and deal with that. And that's just cost prohibitive. So as a community, we're have to accept some cracks are going to exist in some of these deals, and we will work on those and make sure they're safe. But I just want to be, upfront and very honest with you on the realities of this and why, this is the challenge that we have, and why, and frankly, I think Coastside Land Trust went with the decomposed granite on the section on the other side of Seymour Ditch and Park. A lot easier to maintain, frankly. Different maintenance, but you don't have to worry about these situations with bad soil. Food for thought. Jonathan, you had one item I think you were going to add in just in sort of staff comments, if that weren't you, beyond that?
Yeah, just had one item and just wanted to let the bicycle or the BPAC committee members know is that we actually started our Kelly Avenue crosswalks project. It's I don't have any slides, but it's the improvements that we brought to you guys earlier on this year for the improvements of Kelly Avenue and Pilarcitos intersection, as well as the Kelly and Alsace-Lorraine intersection. So those two intersections will be improved, and we've started at least mobilizing today and should be starting up construction within the next week. So we just wanted to give you all the heads up, and we're looking forward to a nice, brisk, and easy project with our contractors on that.
That's great news.
So we're trying to jam before school starts. Early school starting the 11th makes it tough. With July 4th and August 11th, we have a very limited time, but we're going to do the best we can to have the least amount of disruption there. And I will mention that that some folks have raised the questions of what happened to the overhead light that from on the eastbound side of Kelly at Highway 1. If you're not aware, it was actually pretty quick repair, but it was still a temporary repair. We had a couple of teens, we believe teens, hit about 5:30 in the morning, about 2.5, almost 3 months ago, April, hit those posts and knocked them all out, totally cleared through them about 5:30 in the morning. So I'm sure they woke up from that with that. And so Caltrans came in basically by that day, came in with temporary poles, actually got the push buttons going again within 2 days. So we beat up at Caltrans a lot in these meetings at times. They can be frustrating, but I have to give them a shout out for getting in and getting those and bringing in the equipment for that really quickly and repairing that. That is a temporary repair. We're still looking at getting that back. And I know that some folks have identified concerns because you got the two lights instead of the one that used to be in the center. And some folks are having a hard time seeing, or, just visualizing that because they're looking for the middle light. But that's why it's gone. It was not an intentional or planned modification to that intersection. So just stay tuned, and we'll continue to work on it. But I'll give the credit to Caltrans for how quickly they got out there and fixed that for us. But it is not where it needs to be, and we will be working on that as well. I think that is all of our staff. Any of the additional staff updates? So that's all we got.
All right. Well, thank you. Very informative. Any final thoughts, questions, comments from the committee? All right. Seeing and hearing none, I think we can move to adjournment. And I guess our next meeting, at least on my calendar, is on Thursday, September the 1st.
That's correct.
Right. All right. Thank you all. Thank you, staff. Appreciate the updates. Always very informative.
Thank you for those who stayed along for the committee. I know you didn't have to do that, and we kept this meeting because we felt there's a lot of information that would be good to pass along and continue meeting regularly. So thank you for your time. We know this takes time away from your family, from your dinners, from whatever out there dealing with that, your bike rides, whatever it might be with that. So thank you for spending a little time with us and your patience.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry and Jonathan on my crew too for all their hard work.
Thanks,
all right,
everyone.
All right.
We'll see you.
Bye. 7:57.